Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Institute of Interpersonal Hypnotherapy. My name is Matthew Brownstein. Tonight's topic is hypnotherapy for anxiety and depression. I'll start off with the disclaimers. These can be considered diagnostic terms. We're not talking about them that way. So please know I'm not claiming any occupational title here. I'm speaking to you as a friend, and I am saying humanity is plagued with anxious feelings and depressed feelings, and let's do something about that, right? So it's not really a talk tonight about anxiety and depression, because that would be depressing. It's a talk about the movement to wholeness. It is meant to be engaging to some degree, so feel free to use the chat pod, ask questions, share your experience, but at the same time it kind of is a bit more lecture format these days as we're streaming on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So, but feel free to ask questions or engage me to some degree. Also, you can use the comment box, and also if you're watching this, like and subscribe. Thanks. All right, so anxiety and depression. First of all, let's just acknowledge we don't want that, right? You don't want to feel anxious, you don't want to feel depressed. The way my mind works, I'm a philosopher, I'm a religious scholar, I'm a mystic, I'm a Chinese medical student, I don't hold my license, I'm a hypnotherapist, I do a lot of things, and I did all those things because I had a very significant spiritual experience that happened to me when I was 19 years old. The whole room went pure light. Everything went pure love. Everything went pure bliss. Everything was heaven. Everything was angelic. It was my true nature. And I knew it was your true nature, everyone's true nature. And I just said, oh, okay, that's reality. Finally, it took 19 years, but that's what's going on here. Okay, great, because nothing made sense up until that moment. But then, oneness. Got it, okay. So I went in a millisecond from, it happens in an instant when someone wakes up that way. It went from a fear-based world to a love-based world. Now, it took a lot of time, 368 days actually, to tap back into that again, because it went away, and I was saying, where did it go? Right? There's love and light everywhere. This was not drug-induced. It was just the nature of reality, and I couldn't deny it. I'm not the only one, I found out, who had had the experiences, but I was asking everyone I knew at the time, which wasn't a whole lot of people, have you ever had that? And nobody actually had. So I had to go to university and start studying philosophy and then religion and then mysticism. And finally, I'm like, oh, the mystics discovered this. So in college, I could have gone into psychology. I could have gone into any field, really. But I needed something where my occupation was based on that state, because that's where we want to move people to. So when we talk tonight about anxiety and depression, I gave you a little bit of my background and the energy of what I want to convey tonight. Because if we're going to talk about anxiety and depression, we don't want to look at anxiety and depression too closely. We do want to understand what's going on so we can understand the problem so we could solve it. But if you didn't know where you were going, if you didn't know where you were going to bring someone, right? So we found out that someone is in hell, someone is suffering, and let's just imagine this. Drop down from the angelic heavenly realms and come down to earth. Imagine like you're an angel, you're here on earth. Okay, what's going on here? It's not my problem, right? I'm not from this realm. But what's going on down here? Oh, the humans are suffering. What would you immediately start to conclude inside? Like, why? Why are they suffering? Well, first, if a human who's caught up in the darkness goes to help another human caught in the darkness, you say, well, I'm anxious. I'm going to try to help you to not be anxious. Let's study anxiety. So is anxiety a biochemical imbalance? Is depression a biochemical imbalance? Do they share similar biochemical signatures? I think the answers to all of that is yes, if that's how you want to look at it. If you want to only look at a human body and say you're a body, well, the angel would be like, huh? What? But you're not a body. So if your premise is wrong, I'm a philosopher. If your premise is wrong, every statement after that is going to be wrong. So if we're going to develop a model to get people to be free, we've got to know what freedom is. If we want people to be whole, we have to know what wholeness is. If we want people to be friendly, we have to be friends to the hearts of the human race. We can't be like Plato's allegory of the cave. The idea there simply is people were born in a cave, they couldn't move, all they could do is see shadows cast on the wall. They'd never been out of the cave, they never saw what the source of light was, and they never knew what cast the shadows, which were people walking around in the outside world, or the kind of real world. The people in the cave never get to know what reality is, right? So if you are one of those, and you're interacting with another one of those, and caveman A is trying to help caveman B, but they're both completely in an illusion, then what are they going to do? They're going to make a theory based on something they call anxiety, because they're terrified of the shadows and the things that are creating the shadows, and they're really depressed by their situation. It would make sense that someone who wasn't caught up in the matrix would actually come into the matrix and say, hey, there's a solution here. And the truth is, somebody who comes in from that point of view sees one problem and one solution. In A Course in Miracles, that's what it is. There's one problem and one solution. So as I go through some PowerPoint slides tonight and offer the foundation that I would say we have created in interpersonal hypnotherapy, and that we is a complex word there, because it's not only the idea of me that's brought these teachings to this moment, but it's unique. It's not psychology. It's not anything except for a way for people to get free. And as my dear mentor, Mr. Gil Boyne, called it, he said it's a therapy for the people. But we're not even going to use the word therapy tonight. I'm just saying there's a model of mind that can eliminate these problems, but we do need to understand what it means to be a healed healer. Okay, with that said, let's start moving through some slides. We are on a Hot Education Group. That's the main company behind the scenes, and that owns a lot of different branches: the Institute of Interpersonal Hypnotherapy, the International Association of Interpersonal Hypnotherapists, the NLP, the Interpersonal NLP Society, Silent Light Publishers, and I'm the author of 5 books that Silent Light Publishers publishes, along with some other people's. So we're growing, and we offer hypnotherapy and NLP training. Things have been going extremely well, and I think because of what people sense this is all about. And you can see that in the sacred geometry in the symbol itself. But anyway, every Tuesday nights, well, at least through June of 2022, I've been offering free Anahat meditation class support groups. We're going to start going monthly for those of you who attend that. So just check that website. It's onlinemonastery.com. It's a good 60 plus, but you have to practice meditation, so it's really good 100 plus hours and then a lifetime of a certain meditation style, which will really blow your mind. If you're looking for some really in-depth, powerful meditation, which can help with anxiety and depression, it's totally free. You can become a certified teacher of it, and we're creating those now, which is exciting. All right, so that's at onlinemonastery.com. That's a huge part of my life's work. We are the Institute of Interpersonal Hypnotherapy, state licensed training for hypnotherapy hypnotherapist, clinical hypnotherapist, transpersonal hypnotherapist, and then we're currently actually getting licensed by the Department of Education, interpersonal hypnotherapy. It'll be a total of 750 hours officially in September, assuming they approve that. I'm allowed to say that publicly. Certain things you can't disclose in education, but I can say, that's in process. And right now it's 530 hours technically. But anyway, that class starts on Wednesday, so welcome to our new students who are signed up for that class. I love the background of a lot of our new students, and Reiki and massage and philosophy and religion. We had somebody enrolled today, maybe you're here, whose background is philosophy and religion, and I'm like, awesome, that's me. So we attract some really wonderful people, and our next class starts this Wednesday. There are still some seats available, at least online, and in our Orlando location, instituteofhypnotherapy.com. All right, so what is interpersonal hypnotherapy? First, the slide says return to wholeness, because your model has to begin with where we bringing people. If you don't have awakened, enlightened, healed, whatever the term is for it, healers, like I was saying before I went through the slides, right? The healed healer. If we don't have a role model for that, how do we bring anxious and depressed people there? Now, everybody feels emotion, right? It's not like, oh, I had an anxious feeling. This is like when it becomes a chronic thing where every day you're just scared, right? Anxiety is essentially just fear. And we'll go into what those words mean tonight and the models that I pull from, which just is, again, we're saying, like, what is interpersonal hypnotherapy here? It's very much a Course in Miracles based, because you need a solid philosophy to base your theories on. If your premise is just disease, you don't know what you're moving people to. In A Course in Miracles, there's one problem, which is separation, and there's one solution, which is oneness. That's what I experienced when I was 19, and it changed me forever, because it was like, oh, that's the answer. And then it took a while to figure out, well, what profession? What do I do? And then eventually, when I found hypnotherapy, then created a state licensed school for it that's become like international now. And we have team members all over the world and graduates all over the world, and people meditating and healing people all over the world now. It's really amazing to watch that unfolding. It's unfolding because of one person's awareness of infinite love. Like, that's really what I and my life and everything I do is about. So think about, I'm not putting myself in any category, but as I talk about myself a bit, but think about like Christ. He was one young man, one young Jewish boy. He was 30 years old when his ministry started. He only did it for about 3 years, and then they killed him. So he only had 3 years. And if you read the New Testament, the red letter version, meaning the words of Christ when they put them in red, actually very small. You could put that in a really small paperback novel. It's really small, what he said. But look what happened, for better or worse. But really, when you look at the really beautiful things that came out of Christ's teachings, right? Beautiful. Buddha, one man, sat under a tree. And now we have Buddhism. We're talking about between Christianity and, we can go into all the world's religions, but they largely start from one divinely inspired person. So if we're going to study who are the ones who got out of the rabbit hole, who are the ones who, whatever metaphor you use, got out of Plato's cave, who are the ones who got pulled out of the matrix and woke up to who they really are. Right? Those are the ones I would suggest we want to listen to. So, like, what books do we use in a curriculum that are based on that? Well, absolutely, even though we don't force it in any way in our school, A Course in Miracles is absolutely one of the underlying philosophies, because it's about a return movement from fear to love, a return to love. It's a movement from illusion to truth, from darkness to light, from magic principles, meaning maybe using medication to treat anxiety and depression. In A Course in Miracles, that would be called magic. In right-mindedness, we would call that the shift a miracle, from separation to oneness. That's all that has to happen. I'm going to show you a picture, I think, now. Let's see. Actually, no, this is not that picture. I'm the author of Peace Under All Circumstances. It's free on YouTube as an audiobook. If you're not at peace, or you're working to bring people to peace, study these kind of teachings. And again, I made them free. All right, so here's pictures of anxiety and depression. So here's two women, and one looks anxious, panicky, right? And one looks depressed. I just wanted some visual reference. But if I had more time to plan this PowerPoint, I would have put a picture of someone who's suffering and like Buddha. And then I would have just said, what's the difference? But here we have two people, but this is relevant because here's two people who are not well. They're not okay. It doesn't matter if it seems like fear or depression. If it's in Sanskrit, we have a term called rajasic, which is like chaotic energy. That's more, anxiety is more rajasic. And depression is more tamasic, heavy and dark. All right, but either way, they're very similar, not just physiologically, as I understand the science, but they're very similar internally, maybe not subjectively. You say, no, this is fear, and this is like, intense sadness. But I'm going to explain a model tonight that will help us to understand it's essentially the same thing, because I just put all suffering in one basket, and then I put freedom in one basket. And we've created through our school a model of hypnotherapy that simply shifts people from fear to love, from separation to oneness. That's all we need to know. If you start studying the brain science and you start saying it's about dopamine and neurotransmitters and serotonin, and what do you actually know? I would argue you don't, if that's all you talk about, you don't know anything that's really, really, truly valuable, because those things are not causes, they are effects. If all you do is study an effect and master the understanding of an effect to the point where you can biochemically adjust it to give the illusion of wholeness, okay, because maybe that was helpful for a while. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm not putting down Western medicine or psychiatry. Right? Everybody has their place. But is anxiety getting better in our world? Is depression getting better? Is the murder rate going down? Does the news appear to make you think like we're going in the right direction? In many ways, we are. But in a lot of ways, you know, who's winning here, spirit or ego? It appears like ego is running rampant. And if all you do is look at, okay, ego, spirit, insanity, sanity, make mental health, make spirituality, make healing that simple. Shift from wrong-mindedness to right-mindedness. That is just a Course in Miracles. When somebody doesn't utilize those teachings, I often just notice, and now there are many, let me say before I say this, there are many other spiritual paths that lead to the same place. The Course itself says that, and I'm not only a Course in Miracles practitioner. Right? Look at Zen monks. They're so clear, they're so present, they're so whole, they're simple, they're beautiful. Like their life is harmonious and organized, right? So there's like very sane ways of being, and then there's like really insane ways of being. Again, it's just a simple shift as long as that becomes the underlying model of things. So let's pull from tonight a little bit of yogic philosophy. We could say yogic psychology, but you're supposed to be a psychologist to talk about these things. The truth is, you're just talking about the mind. And who has the right to talk about the mind and to help to transform the mind back to wholeness? Every single one of us. A Course in Miracles says, is psychotherapy a profession? And it says, strictly speaking, no. Because how could something that everyone is involved with be a separate profession? We all need to do this, whether it's hypnotherapy or A Course in Miracles or a yoga teacher or a Reiki practitioner, whatever you do, there's one thing you have to do. If you don't teach forgiveness and return people to wholeness, you're not doing the one thing you're here to do. So the idea is that we have a mission. In Sanskrit, it'd be called your dharma, your purpose. Your purpose will be aligned with returning people to wholeness. But first, physician, heal thyself, right? So hypnotherapy becomes a calling for a lot of us because we realize I can do my spiritual thing professionally. Here's just a quick personal thing in that. I was traveling across the country once when I was much younger, I think in my early 20s, and we were riding our bikes around a lake, and there were two guys sitting there, and they had a sign. There was a big sign that said, free advice. I got to stop for this. So my friend asked a question, and I don't remember what that was about, but I said, I haven't had a body experience once, and I explained the nature of it. And the guy, and I never understood what had happened to me at that time. It was a very interesting mystical experience I won't go into now. And then I asked the question to one of the guys, and he said, I can't give you advice about that. I don't have any experience on that, but I can tell you this. If you don't dedicate your life to a career in metaphysics, you will not be happy. I'm like, wow. That was so insightful. So a lot of you who might be listening to this, who are just enrolled in our school, like I know I'm talking to some of our new students right now who are starting on Wednesday, it's exciting because you might be in the mental health field, or you've been in religion or philosophy or Reiki or massage, but you've realized at some point, the mind, it's the mind, it's the mind. It's not the biochemicals, it's not the muscle tension, it's not the stress, it's not what's happening on the news, it's not what's happening with COVID and all these other things. It's the mind. The mind is the problem. The mind is the veil. The mind is what needs to be healed. Nothing else needs to be healed. Once we catch on to that, right, it's really good to have a profession or an occupation, meaning like it's how you occupy your time, however you do it, helping to return people to wholeness. Okay, so that's a lot of Course in Miracles here, but let's go back to I was saying yogic philosophy or yogic psychology. There's a very simple understanding of the mind that we get in the yogic understanding, which is based on a term called sanskar. A sanskar is simply a mental impression. Every sentient being, even non-sentient beings, but we can understand sentient beings, meaning plants, I believe, are sentient, but let's not even go there. Let's say you have to have a central nervous system for this talk. So animals, right, cats and dogs, have sanskars, and human beings have sanskars. Apes and chimpanzees, we all have sanskars. Snakes, right? If you've got eyes, you pretty much have sanskars. A sanskar is a mental impression. But really, these philosophies say every form has sanskar. What is a mental impression? Well, first we want to ask, who is it being impressed upon? And what's impressing? There's a conscious observer and impressions happen to the conscious observer, right? But let's make it really simple to understand. Here I am, here you are, right? We am, I am. That's the essence of your being. That's like that angelic perspective who knows, oh, you're a spiritual being. You're a consciousness. Next week, it's 4th of July, but we'll still be doing class. And the class is called What is Consciousness? So what is consciousness? Well, spoiler alert for the next class, you are consciousness. If you don't know that, then you probably just don't know who you are. And that's significant. If you don't know who you are, how are you going to get free of suffering and how you can get others free of suffering? We have to awaken to who we are. You're not a body, you're not your emotions, you're not your mind. That might be the first time you're hearing that, and then you're like, well, how does this person know? You're not your car. You might think you're your car, but it's kind of laughable. You're not your vehicle. I promise you, because I've been out of my body so many times, and I know myself more as an angel than I do as a human, you're not a body. I know I'm not a body. Course in Miracles, you're not a body. Yogic philosophy, you're not a body. Christianity, you're not a body. Judaism, you're not a body. Right? Every tradition, pretty much, and there's a lot of good research on it. Maybe not hardcore science, but there's some really good evidence. You're not a body. Right? But you're also not the emotions in the body. And you're not even the mind, because that's just all human, right? The English language, whatever you speak in your brain, in your head, is human. And the emotions are human. And does the human need to be anxious or depressed? Not really, no. I mean, are there normal emotions in a human? Sadness, yes. Fear, yes. Anger, yes. Guilt, yes. When we get enough of that and it gets all blocked up, we start getting anxiety and depression. But we have to understand this Sanskar model says underneath your anxiety and depression is a disturbed human being. Look at the people, the women in these pictures. They're not in that state of oneness and wholeness, right? And it's not just women, of course. I just happened to grab some pictures quickly. So anybody, however you identify, man, woman, or other, like whatever your experience is, the question is, are you okay? Are you whole, right? When we're not, it's because the system is blocked up. So what is it blocked up with? The term here is sanskar. So a sanskar is a mental impression. For human beings, it is a memory now, right? Something imprints upon you. That's a sanskar. It's a memory. But what's inside of that memory for a human being? Negative belief systems about oneself and negative emotions. So imagine that we have blockages in our system. I learned about this before I even went to Chinese medical colleges. I went to 2 different Chinese medical schools because I knew there were energy blockages. My studies had got me to the point of, oh, there are blockages. Simply stated, it's a very complex philosophy in psychology. The yogic model says you've got sanskars blocking you. You have memories that are unresolved with negative beliefs, and that means I'm bad, I'm stupid, I'm worthless, I'm unlovable, I'm dirty, I'm disgusting, I'll never amount to anything. All those negative beliefs about oneself are stored in these sanskars. And within those, and it's all just one packet of cause and effect, it's not like you could say this causes this, but just imagine this one packet of negative memory, negative beliefs, and negative emotions, hurt, sadness, fear, anger, and usually topped beautifully with guilt. And then the shame and the embarrassment and all the stuff that comes with a false sense of self. Little veils in the system that amount to a lot of veils that is like a perfect diamond covered in dirt. You're a perfect diamond covered in dirt. An angel would say to you, I see the diamond, I want to help you to get through the dirt, but it's not always comfortable to clear all that dirt. So inside of all that dirt, and nobody's judging here, but inside of those layers of sadness and hurt and fear and guilt that human beings hold, in the core of that is the most sublime divine love and beauty and bliss and wisdom and power and wonder. I was doing yoga with a friend once, and it was my early stages where I was tapping back into the light, and the whole room was just again filled with light. It was only love and bliss. And I was teaching a friend yoga, and I was so young with this at the time. I was literally just kind of rolling on the floor in bliss, which you just don't really do as you mature. But it's just so blissful. What could I do? And he said, "Oh, lucky you. I'm such a loser." And I wrote in my journal that night, I couldn't believe I was watching God telling me that he was a loser. Because everything is light. You are light. Everything is that love and that oneness. If you're not feeling it, you something's wrong. It's that dirt. It's those layers. In Sanskrit, they're called sanskars. So knowing what to do with the sanskars is everything. Don't see, at least the way see it however you want to, but the way I choose not to see anxiety and depression as physical things or biochemical things or even emotional things. They are mental things, right? If you're not okay, if you're anxious or depressed, you're doing something in your mind which makes you not okay. And there's a lot of choice going on here because an angel sees you have free will, right? God gave you free will. Now, whether you believe in God or not, it's really hard to deny that you have free will. Like scientists have been quoted as saying something, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm like forced to believe I have free will. So like, paradox or whatever, and all good truths tend to be paradoxical. So yeah, it's like I can't deny I have free will, which makes me feel like I'm not free, but I can't get rid of the idea that I have free will. So let's acknowledge you have free will. In A Course in Miracles, it says if you're not okay, if you're suffering, if you're not at peace, you've chosen wrongly. So what does that mean? It means you don't have right relationship with your emotions and your psyche, your mind. Because what happens with all these sanskars, why are they blocked? Why are the muscles all knotted up? Why is the body so out of balance? Why are all the chemicals out of balance? And organ systems are failing. Peace is health. Peace is health. These women we see on the screen here are, and again, men and women, I'm talking about humanity, and whatever other category. So human beings are not at peace, obviously. Peace is health. Peace is physical health, mental, emotional health, and behavioral health. It's like if you catch on to that, you want to scream that lovingly to the world and say, if you're in the field of mental health, let's go to the next slide. So those ladies don't look happy. So here's a happy therapist. And I want to be respectful of people in the mental health profession and just invite that the love that we are, the kindness that we are, the compassion that we are, the joy that we are, that's the role model. That's what we see in the great mystics, right? Those are the people I studied and designed my life theories around, who are the ones who are free? Who are the healed healers? Who are the ones who speak these deeper truths? So when you're sitting in a position of, I don't want to say authority, that's not the right word here, facilitation, but you're like the leader, you're guiding someone's process. Whether you call yourself a social worker or a mental health counselor, or a hypnotherapist, or a Reiki practitioner, or a massage, whatever you do, whatever you call yourself, which is just a word, right? You're a facilitator for someone else's process now. In A Course in Miracles, you are the light of the world. You are amongst the ministers of God, right? So if you know, my book, The Sutras on Healing and Enlightenment, really goes into this, the idea that the healer must be whole, but that in the process of helping others, as we help them to heal, we're healed ourselves. You don't have to wait until you're totally healed. You just start getting out there and doing it. I started when I was 25 years old. I made so many mistakes, but I started the work because I realized it's not just blissing out in a cave. You've got to be in the world with helping hands. You enter the marketplace with helping hands. You're a bodhisattva, right? So an angel in the world, a bodhisattva in the world, is going to make the world better by reminding people there is better. There's always better. There's always better. But when you're anxious and depressed, you're not saying what is better. You're caught in these old loops. You're stuck in negative perception. So, okay, anyway, let's be real. Like, what do we do here? Acknowledge that the human being is not okay. They're in a state of separation. But let's go into what is anxiety now? What is depression? The way I define anxious feelings, again, I'm not talking clinical diagnostic terms for the legality of it. So anxiety, psychiatrists can have that. Anxious feelings, everybody has. Okay. So what do we do with it? What is this anxious thing? When you're not okay with your own feelings, you use your willpower and you push them down. I'll say it again a few times in different ways. That's anxiety. You have emotions that want to come up. You have a sense of self that is in there. Like, look at where my hands go. It's trying to come up through your heart. There's a child in there, an inner child. There's a hurt, sad, scared, wounded child. It's a sanskaric pattern. It's not really real in who you are. It's an ego. It's a masquerading self. It's a younger self, a stunted self. Just imagine inside your heart, there's a little boy or girl Someone who's in there and it's like, well, who am I and where am I? Am I safe? Is it okay? Am I bad? Am I stupid? Am I unlovable? Maybe I'm ugly. Maybe I'm disgusting. Maybe I'm dirty. Oh my God, I'm so scared. I hate these people. I'm so angry. Oh my God, I feel so guilty. That's how human beings live, okay? And then what do we do to try to feel better? We push it all down inside. Now you're terrified of yourself. That's anxiety. Right? That's it. Don't say it's not enough dopamine or serotonin. I don't study that at all. It doesn't matter. My dopamine is perfectly fine because I'm choosing love. I'm choosing wholeness. My brain reflects that. Peace is health. So you don't, as a healer, as a miracle worker, you don't, as a hypnotherapist, you don't look, as an interpersonal hypnotherapist, you don't look at the physiology. You have to look at the mind. Right? I'm not going to say the psychology because somebody tried to make that a separate profession. Look at the mind and just say the mind is split. So dissociative identity disorder, or what was called multiple personality disorder, to some degree is happening to everybody. You've got parts of yourself that are disowned, that are suppressed. When it's diagnosable as other personalities, yeah, the splits have gone really far. But we talk about in hypnotherapy something called parts therapy, subpersonalities. You've got a part of you here and a part of you here. What are these parts? Who's in there? Why are there so many people in there? You've got another aspects of the diamond, like, you've got a little boy in there, you've got a little girl in there, you've got your divine feminine self, your divine masculine self, you've got, like, there are aspects of a whole being. It's like there's your natural state, then there's your the distorted state, the illusory state, the state of what the yogis call illusion, delusion, and error. We're filled with errors. We're filled with negative perceptions. All right, so that's what's going on inside of here. What is anxiety? When you push all that stuff down because you don't want to feel all of it and you don't know what to do with it. It's called suppression, and it is the cause of psychosomatic illness. And most illness is psychosomatic illness. So suppression, dividing your psyche, is creating psychosomatic illness. And is that anxiety? Of course, anxiety is psychosomatic, right? Meaning your mind is causing the physiology to get out of whack, right? How could anxiety not have a mental component to it, right? We can't look at the body. Look at the inner child who's suffering. But what's going on with the inner child in there? She's not alone. The little boy or girl inside is not alone. Now that can seem like entities and creepy, and it's not to say that that's not possible, but we're not going there yet. What's going on in this sanskaric field is not just the impressions that I'm a child, the impressions of the parents, the caregivers, the teachers, the nuns, and if somebody sexually abused you, all of those impressions are in your psyche. So why are we divided? Because you hate yourself. Because the sense of self that we think we are as this inner child is really disturbing because you can't get rid of the memories, right? It's like there's so much pain in there. There's so much heartache and suffering. And not that I haven't gone through my own challenges in life, but I learned early on how to let the energy move through me and it didn't get stuck. When you suppress and close down, the energy gets stuck. Now you're living up here. Right? You think you're the thinker up here. You can't stop thinking. Have you ever noticed you can't stop thinking? Why won't this shut up? Your heart, where we store all the baggage, is the root of your mind. The heart is the root of the mind. If you push all the baggage in your heart and suppress all your pain in there, any sadness, any fear, the stuff you don't like, that you disowned, your inner child's not alone in there. That little boy or girl is terrified of whatever attacked the child, living in the memories, and the subconscious mind does not know fact from fiction. Subconscious, below conscious awareness, or unconscious, meaning you're not conscious of it. Your unconscious mind is not unconscious. Your unconscious mind is just subconscious. It's below your conscious awareness. And what's under the surface? Pain and suffering and sadness and guilt and shame and horrible beliefs about yourself. Or clients, if you don't put yourself in that category. But most people, honestly, are in that category. So, you might be realizing, like, I'm pointing right to your heart where the wounds are. And I'm saying, like, who are you really? It's very transformative to start asking, who am I? Who am I? What's going on in me? Right? Realize there's a division. There's a feeling of separation. Now, when the anxiety is just because you push it down and you're afraid of what can come up. I'll tell you a personal quick story that might help. I lived at Zen Mountain Monastery in my early 20s, and when you're right, you don't know really what that's all about until you start living in a monastery and you know what the schedule is every day. And one of the fun things you do is you get to sit and meet the Zen master, or the high level monks, or in this case, the abbot of the monastery. I was really young and certainly nervous and anxious being there, just, like first time, like, am I going to do it all right? And so you got to go and like wait to meet the master. And then, this is this big deal. And there's like drums and Zen, and there's, it's powerful, it's intense, it's serious, it's like real work. You're not just like blissing out, it's like real training. And so it's like, all right, I'm sitting there waiting, I'm going to meet the master, and then I'm going to bow a certain way, and I screw up the bow, and I sit down, and I'm like visibly shaking. And he said, somebody looks right through you. So you're with the presence of somebody who's a bit otherworldly. And he said, you don't have to be anxious. I'm like, yeah, I think I do. And he said, then it's okay to be anxious. I'm like, oh, I already knew that, but man, at that moment, when I was open, when emotion is flowing, the subconscious is wide open, and I couldn't not be nervous at that moment. And he just said, then let yourself be nervous. I'm like, and I took it like a blanket statement across the board. Oh, it's okay to be nervous. And then I just started telling people if I was nervous, I'm like, hey, it's nice to meet you. I'm anxious. Like, if I was feeling anxious, I would just tell people. I stopped pretending I didn't have human emotions. I had hurt, I had sadness, I had fear, I had anger, I had guilt. Not too bad, but, I had a good childhood. But everybody has stuff in there. When we become anxious, it's because we're suppressing this stuff and we don't want to feel it. Now, remember, fear is natural. This is a biological organism. It's not much different from an animal. It is an animal, right? It gets afraid, like deer. They just get afraid. There's nothing wrong with it, and then they return back to bliss, right? The deer feels its fear and then moves on. And then it's back into bliss. Why does imagine being a deer, how peaceful you would be. Yeah, but you always got that little bit of fear going on in case, there's a coyote who's going to come get you. But when you know you're okay, the biochemicals return to homeostasis. When humans suppress their emotions and push all that stuff down in there, now they're afraid of what's down in there, which leads us to why anxiety and depression are so similar physiologically and in a talk like this. You're depressed because you blocked your energy flow. That's all there is to it. You can get sad, and you can cry and you move through it, but you get depressed when you are pushing it down. So anxiety is you're afraid of what's going to come up. Depression is you're afraid of what's going to come up. You're pushing it down. You might say, no, I'm depressed because I lost this and I lost this and I lost. The losses that we go through in the human experience, quite often spiritually speaking, are showing us what we thought was valuable is not actually valuable. Shh. Don't tell a lot of people this because they'll get really angry because they think you're taking away what's valuable. So here's what's valuable. Love, right? But we think love is outside of us. We think another person is the source of our love. A mystic understands everything is love. I am love. You are love. Light is love. Light is everywhere. Life is love. The deer are love. Children are love. Grass is love. Not the weed, but the other weeds. The green grass, in your yard is what I'm referring to. I'm just thinking about anything that pops in my mind. It's like, well, that's love. It's all love. You can't lose love. You can't lose what you love. Love is eternal. It's when we think that an external person, place, or thing is valuable, that's when we suffer. But anyway, there's a lot to be said there. So when we're looking for the love outside of ourselves, we've already set ourselves up to suffer. The real relationship with love is the love inside of you. Because what's pushing up on all of the pain that's in the heart? Love. The love is trying to come through. Those of you who are in the yogic model or understand Kundalini, your Kundalini Shakti is trying to burst through your heart, it's trying to open your chakras, but you're in there suppressing them. If you're anxious, you can rest assured you're afraid of something inside of your own psyche. What's the solution there? Take a big breath, think open, and allow it to be there. Just allow it to be there. So we'll talk about solutions in a moment, for sure. So let me go to a question here, and then, excuse me, I talked forever about the problem. Let's start talking about the solution. The question is, what if the client just doesn't want to be emotional and keeps blocking that emotion, and even during the sessions keeps themselves from feeling or letting it out? Beautiful question. Thank you. And I'm glad you asked it, because when I got into my private practice, I knew all this stuff already. Like my spiritual awakening at 19 taught me like everything I needed to know. Everything else was just helping me to understand what had happened and how to design a system to get people to that. So, all right, great. After 25 years of life, I'm ready to start my career, and I'm sitting there with clients, and oh my God, they're so blocked. They don't want to feel their feelings. I can't get them to open up. Like, they're telling me that they don't have emotions. They're telling me that they're already healed. And I'm like, why are you in my office? And it became such a, like, what do I do with the wall? What do I do with the denial layer where they aren't willing? I have great techniques now, but I can't use them. Like, how do you hypnotize someone who won't let you in, right? So I had to start designing things over the years to help to speed up the process and actually, successfully get in. The main thing I did, which is similar to what we're talking about tonight, is what I call the talk. The talk is a 45-minute talk that I would have with the client. And I would teach them, stop suppressing. And then I would teach them, don't act out on the stuff. So if you want to hear the talk, just Google my name and YouTube and Opening the Heart. So I designed a CD set for my clients instead of back in the day of CDs. Before, I would try to do any transformative work. I would give them the talk. But instead of charging them for a whole session, I just said, here, look, 1995, it was an upsell. I could make a little money in my private practice. And I would sell probably 10 of those a week. I was seeing about 25 clients a week. And I had all my CDs that I would sell my clients. And made like 1,000 extra bucks a month selling CDs to my clients. But the main one was the Opening the Heart series. Again, you can find that on YouTube now. So it's the version I had at the time, which I do give to my current clients, and our students in the school get this exact set of teachings. The 45-minute talk on what to do with your emotions. So the answer to your question is give them the talk one way or another. Then another part of that audio set was another recording about techniques to open the heart, and I'll discuss some of those tonight actually. And then the third thing is a meditation that programs them to open up. So first you have to explain in the hypnotherapy model that we have a subconscious mind. You can draw a little circle, right? Put a line, conscious, subconscious, head and heart, and explain to them your problem is down there. The heart is the root of the mind. This won't shut up because this feels bad. And this is a problem-solving intelligence trying to figure out how to make this thing feel better. But meanwhile, the separation is becoming more severe as they keep suppressing. So you have to explain to them what's going on. That's the first step. You just have to bring awareness to it and don't try to do anything else. Until we gain access to the subconscious, there's nothing we can do. That's like all you have to do is clear that wall. So what is really all transformational work? The 50% of it is get that wall out of the way, right? If I'm trying to go into your garage to fix your car, but you keep the garage door closed, I don't care how good my wrenches are. You got to open the door, but you're the one who holds the key to the door, not me. You asked me to help you, but you're not even letting me in your house. So we have to see it as that serious, that they don't want to open up. So once we explain to them what's going on, then we have techniques to help to take the wall down. Now, I have a slide on that, so let's see when that's going to... there's some modalities. We'll talk about how to use those in that context. Okay, so basically we have to explain what's going on to them, the talk, and then I usually in that very session will do some type of hypnotic programming as well, so that's the first thing there. So just how do we start to deal with the anxious, depressed feelings? I'm not saying anxiety and depression, okay? Anxious feelings, depressed feelings, but really just the not okay human being. How do we deal with that? Well, the first major step is opening the heart. So I'll do a hypnotic programming session, customized for the client, dealing with their issues, and then dealing with, I call it in our school, column A, column B. It's so simple. You're scared, how would you like to be? Like, duh. I mean, I can't believe people have made healing so complicated. So, no offense to any one person when I say duh. But, like, all right, you're sad. How do you want to be? You're angry. How do you want to be? That's what good therapy should be, right? Just let's mutually agree, client, on what your goals are, and I will help to move you there. So while I'm creating the motivation, which is my only job really, create motivation to move towards the light, to move towards peace and joy and bliss and love and wholeness, and no longer. So you can't just say you can't just say I don't want to be angry. I had a client. She came in and she said, I said, what's the issue? She said, I'm angry. I said, okay. Eventually, I was like, how would you like to be? She said, not angry. Like, well, that's what you don't want. What do you want? She's like, I just don't want to be angry. She couldn't conceive of the opposite. So, but of course she could, because there's nobody who hasn't experienced some light in some way. So, but me, being whole enough at the time, could say, don't you want inner peace? Right, so we might have to advertise for, okay, we help with anxious feelings, because people are looking for peace, but they do want to get rid of their anxiety. So remember, there's a movement away from pain and then towards pleasure, and most people are wired just to move away from pain. Western medicine and psychology are largely oriented to move away from pain. But like I started the talk with, if you don't know where you're moving and if you're not there yourself, how are you going to get someone there? If you haven't made it through the jungle yourself, on this side, just medicating. You get through the jungle to where you're free, and then you start guiding other people to the other side of the jungle. So mostly it's about us being whole, and the techniques just fall into place. Again, I started with wholeness at 19 years old. I had a glimpse of it, and then I dedicated my whole life to tapping back into it. But inherent in that is the desire to help other people get there as well. So yeah, get there yourself, guide others there, and the techniques fall into place. So I would hypnotically program it. Eye movement therapy, which needs a disclaimer as well. I'm not saying EMDR. We don't do that. Hypnotists have been waving watches in front of people's faces for a few hundred years, so haha, we started that. We figured that out first, that if you move the eyes back and forth, we can create change in the mind. Yeah, brilliant. But it's really incredible how much access we can get to the subconscious when the eyes are simply moving. So be careful with using techniques without proper training and understanding ethics and law and professionalism and all that. As we're talking about modalities that you can definitely get in trouble for using in the wrong context. So get proper training in this stuff. And again, we are a state licensed school licensed to teach these techniques. So eye movement, which was no small feat, by the way, eye movement therapy is a way of gaining access to the subconscious mind. And then you can start doing opening the heart work there. You're safe. It's okay to take down the wall. You just say exactly what they need to hear, that they're willing to hear at that moment while the eyes are moving in a certain way. But I offer a lot of training in that technique with these principles in mind. Parts therapy. We have different parts. Like I said, your inner child's not alone. You've got inner parents in there. You've got the inner nun. You've got the inner abuser, plural. There's a lot of negative characters essentially attacking the child. Is right. It's really what a lot of those memories are. We can start sorting through. We've got this inner critical voice, the inner child voice. You've got the protective voices. And the protective voices you can talk to in parts therapy and just be like, can you see what you're doing here? You're trying. So imagine the protective part is this layer. You can talk to that part. You can say, what's your job? What are you doing? Well, I'm protecting 5-year-old Mary. Why? Well, because she was so scared and she didn't know what to do. So I just developed and I came in, I started closing it down and making the memories go away and just telling her about bunnies and fairies and, roses, and let's push all that pain away. Well, there's your anxiety part right there. And that's your depression part right there. The part wasn't bad. It was 5 years old. It was doing the best it could at the time. So what we're doing is really always just getting that heart open. Parts therapy can get the protecting parts to have new jobs and to gain access to the inner child. Then the regression work, that's when we need the emotions really open. But we also have breath work. So breath work and regression are ways that we can get into the subconscious content, bring it to consciousness, but be properly trained with state licensed diplomas, right, at a high level of professionalism to be able to deal with what we bring up. Now, severe mental illness, not for hypnotherapy. Diagnosable conditions, right? But anxious feelings, because underneath that is hurt and sadness and anger, and we deal with that. Breath work and regression can bring that to consciousness, but really you need really good in-depth training. Again, we're moving our training to 750 hours to support, and more. We're going beyond that because this stuff is extremely powerful and it should be done more and more and more. So once we have access to the emotions, then we can get to the root cause and start clearing that stuff. Breath work will force the stuff to consciousness, and that can help, but it can't override the walls completely, right? If you're really suppressing, you don't want to feel it, it won't come up. So you got to clear those protective layers first. Then you can get to the access to the inner child, essentially. And if you believe in past lives, which is the next bullet point, below the inner, so you got like a layer of anxiety here, right, and depression. Underneath that is all the hurt, sadness, fear, anger of the inner child. But a lot of researchers, meaning those who go deep into that, have realized, oh, there's other memories in there too, and they appear to be from past lives. I don't know, even though I think it's highly probable that past lives are real. I say I don't know just, for our atheists and agnostics out there. Like, I respect that. We don't have hardcore science on it. But there's enough evidence, anecdotal, and there's just enough to say, all right, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. There's probably past life memories in there because they seem to come up. So part of being whole is to clear those sanskars as well, meaning your soul existed before this lifetime, you didn't come in clean, and there are memories from before this birth. When we clear those, there's just that much more wholeness. I personally looked at 14 of my past lives, whether they're real or not. I'm not saying they were 100% history. Memory is not 100% history anyway. But what was in there was in there. And they're traumatic memories of rape and prison and suicide and murder and violence. I mean, I put myself more in angelic category these days, but I'll tell you, to get more clear, it wasn't all like angelic memories. I had a teacher, he once said, in case you haven't noticed, you're not in the angelic realms right now. All right, the human realm is quite hellish. I mean, it is. For many people, it really is hell here. So if you're in hell, build a monastery. So, we're here to be of service. Like, if we weren't for the bodhisattvas, who would bring water to those on fire? I think the Dalai Lama said that. Okay, one of you said, again, I'm not saying names because we're all public here, when my client started to feel irritated in breath work, she stopped and wouldn't go further. No more sessions. Yeah, so welcome. I know who you are. I'm just not saying your name. Good to have you here. Sometimes we push people a bit too fast, like ripping the skin off a snake before it's ready. Breath work is very powerful, but our job should never be to cause more fear. That's Course in Miracles. If you push someone too fast, the fear and guilt mechanism, guilt as well, will kick in. Like, they understand, okay, well, maybe they don't, right? We have to give a good pre-talk before breath work, saying, we're going to bring up some pretty intense stuff here. And, they might be like, oh, yeah, I'm ready. I'll do whatever it takes. Remember, think about, like, if you go on a really long hike, like we hiked the top of a mountain here recently, and it was like, you say, oh, okay, it'll be hard. That'll be painful. No, but when it's really hard and painful, it's easy to say it. But when you're feeling pain, pain is really painful, right? The client can say it, but yeah, we need to understand, and I have so much empathy for learning as you go, because that's all you can do is just start helping clients and make mistakes. And I don't know if there was a mistake here, but if there's any feedback I could offer, it's when it seems more difficult, go slower. Despite they want to get healed faster, in Zen they say, how long does it take to reach enlightenment? And the master says 10 years. And the student says, 10 years? I don't have 10 years. Well, it'll take you 20 years. 20 years? I don't have 20 years. Well, it'll take you 30 years. So going slower with the more difficult clients is always the way to go. It'll get them there faster. So it's like, how much pressure do you push? The Buddha said, don't make the guitar string too tight or it won't play, and don't make it too loose or it won't play. But we got to just push the limit a little bit. We have to challenge our limits, but don't cause more fear, just what they can handle. So if you go in the order actually on the screen, it's kind of how our school's training is, you're pacing and leading them towards the heavier artillery. Do it too fast, and what comes up, they're just not ready for. And they might say they are, right? But once they start realizing, remember, most people, so here's a little secret I learned over the years. Like, why the wall? Why the wall? Why it's so hard to get through the wall? God, I just can't get through your wall. Because you hate yourself. Again, I'm not talking to any one person right now. Clients hate themselves. And you become the enemy in their mind because you're showing them something they hate. Don't ever think that's not true. I mean, that is pure Course in Miracles, which I believe is 100% true. But really, from my experience, and if we're really honest with ourselves, most people hate themselves because that's what the underneath the why are you pushing all this down? Because you hate it. You have judged it so horribly. And the self that's down there feels terribly judged and unforgiven. So you're asking people to go into their own personal hell that they've chosen to try to push away. Sometimes slower is better once you realize what you're asking them to get into. Most of my clients only see like 1 or 2 people a week these days with how big our school and unhot education group has gotten, which is such a blessing. But my clients are usually our students. So it's like, oh, you know enough. I can push you a bit harder. But like I have a client now who's not one of our students. And it's interesting to listen to the average normal human being because they really don't know this stuff. And I'm always like shocked. I'm like, wait, you're still suppressing? Oh, you're still looking for love outside of yourself. Like things that are so obvious to me, people haven't learned those lessons yet. So we kind of need to remember and empathize with those who are still in hell, that if you try to rip off that skin of the snake too quickly, it's going to hurt them more. It's going to make them more afraid. They don't know what to do with their emotions. All right, great. And one of you said yes, denial, right? Great. And then open the heart talk and meditation really worked for me to be in touch with their emotions. Thanks. Awesome. Good to hear. Thank you. Yeah. That's what it's all about. So how do we deal with anxiety and depression? These are the techniques in the screen, the main techniques we train you in the school. But again, what's pushing now 750 hours. And that training is, by the way, the neuro-linguistic programming training is 100 hours. A lot of other stuff that's already available. We're just lumping it all in now into one larger curriculum that we're moving toward. So really 750 hours. Currently it's been 500 to train our students in how to use more than this, of course, but again, these major modalities. Let's talk about some self-help techniques. And then you said parts therapy has been one of the biggest modalities I use in my practice. It is so powerful. Yeah, it seems a bit more subtle. It's not like breath work, but when you get in truly into hypnosis and, you start talking to those inner parts, they're very real, right? Don't ever think like, oh, parts therapy, I'm just making stuff up. No, like that subpersonality is in there. You've got an inner child. And she is not okay. You've got an inner parent, and that person is vicious. And in the subconscious, they're attacking each other, really. The parent's attacking the child. The child is scared, right? And so if you ever do parts therapy with the inner child, the inner critic, and the inner adult, just one session on that, usually like a good second session, parts therapy, inner child, inner critic, inner adult. And then you get the critic to tone it down, start being friendly, teach the critic how to be nice, raise the child's self-esteem, and get the adult to mediate the conflict well. Learn how to do that, and you'll bring the psyche to wholeness much faster. I have a recording on YouTube. It's called Integrating the Psyche to Wholeness. It's very powerful. It's a hypnotic programming session. If you haven't listened to it yet, definitely try it out. YouTube, Integrating the Psyche into Wholeness, Matthew Brownstein. So it'll put you into very deep hypnosis, which is awesome. Like it takes you very deep. And then it welcomes in the inner child, and it welcomes in that inner critic and inner parent voice, and it reprograms them the way they should be. Should is a critic word, but the way they can be. And then once they're balanced, you can integrate it. So that's interpersonal hypnotherapy. Is largely dealing with the relationships in the subconscious. And a lot of our students, honestly, in the first 500 hours still haven't caught on to how important that is. That's why there's now an extra 250 hours, or just our additional 22 hours of, right now, the interpersonal hypnotherapist training, which focuses on the relationships. We think that, you must be anxious because you had one bad memory in your childhood. That's how people think. It's how a lot of hypnotherapists and therapists think, right? There must be one problem. There is one problem, but it's not one childhood memory. It's a series of relationships living in the subconscious. If you don't know how to bring those relationships to wholeness through forgiveness, You don't know how to heal the psyche. Because there's an inner child. There is. And there's an inner parent voice. There is. Those are the ones largely in conflict, right? We have to look at that relationship. Characterological low self-esteem does not come from one event. It is listening to your dad every day tell you verbally or non-verbally you're worthless. And then of course you have low self-esteem, and of course you're depressed, and of course your serotonin is out of whack, and of course the medication or drugs will make that feel better. But not really, right? Because it's mental, it has to be dealt with mentally. All right, so some techniques, self-help modalities. Number one, opening the heart work. What's the best technique for that if you want to start doing it? Don't ever underestimate simplicity. Just focus at your heart, take a big breath, open. Do it all the time, like just make it a mantra. Just open. Just say it out loud or in your mind, focusing on your chest. Exhale, open. And make the choice. Soften your shoulders, relax through your neck and throat, and start thinking about linking head and heart. You can study the work of the Heart Math Institute. Really amazing science about the mind that's happening here. In Chinese medicine, if you say to somebody of that, the traditions that comes from, or where I was careful about my politically correct terms here, but the more Eastern traditions, you say, where's the mind? They point to their hearts, right? Because the Shen, the spirit, that part of us actually is meant to be here. You're not supposed to be up in your head all the time thinking like that. That'll be quiet when this is at peace. So we've got to get into the heart. So yeah, just teach your clients for yourself. Take a breath. Open. Next, life mastery work. Why is this like one of the hubs of what I offer in our school? We have interpersonal hypnotherapy. We have anahat meditation. Those make for amazing practitioners. But then you want somebody who also is whole and complete in all aspects of their life, because they need to be role models for their clients. So life mastery is learning to create success in every aspect of your life. Because if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to get there? If you're only treating anxiety and depression, who got you that awesome home? Who got you the beautiful relationship? Who got our relationships, like loving and harmonious relationships? Who helped you to be like spiritually illuminated? I don't know. Someone just gave me a medication. I know, but who helped you to have like the cars and the travel and the free time and the financial freedom? I don't know. I just have Xanax. You will not be so depressed when you wake up every morning. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is my life. Like when every moment is so blessed that you're in gratitude just because you're overwhelmed in gratitude, then you're not depressed anymore, right? But it's not because your serotonin is off, whatever. We hate ourselves. So law of attraction is happening whether we know it or not. You can learn to start thinking more positive, but the teachings that I offer go beyond positive thinking. They go into awakening, they go into enlightenment, they go into self-realization or God-realization. But even deeper than all those amazing words, they go into self-actualization. Self-actualization is where every aspect of your life is successful. You can't be depressed when that's happening. So you say, but things happen. I know, I wrote a book called Peace Under All Circumstances. But the choice to be at peace no matter what, based on law of attraction, means my inside is at peace. My outside matches that. That's how life works. In case you don't know, in case you're new at this game. You get what you want, essentially. Law of attraction says you're going to pull into your reality a reflection of you. I was talking to somebody recently who's a soldier, like special forces level soldier. And we were like, it was a good talk. And it was like, oh, you value war. You get off on this. You like the bullets flying past your ears. Wow, like you and your buddies really like this. And he was explaining, it was like, because of the DEA, that's why we have cartels. It's like, if you study Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, in the section on crime and punishment, I think, I remember I read that years ago, it says the prisoner, the jailer and the prisoner are at the same wavelength. Yeah, I'm paraphrasing now, but right, we're creating these problems. Because remember I said when we started, we made the wrong choice somewhere. If you're anxious and depressed and your life isn't awesome, you made the wrong choice somewhere. We're not victims of the world we see. We're inventing the world we see. But if you just choose to liberate your heart and get the light going again, get the love going again, you don't have to do positive thinking. It's fine to go do affirmations. I got to put that on this list. But when you learn to really get liberated, your life will just reflect it. It's a passive way to wealth, because by just sitting and doing nothing, law of attraction pulls everything good to you. Why? Because you're pure goodness. Law of attraction says whatever you're vibrating at, life is going to match that, right? So if you want to attract the right relationship, you have to be the right person. You have to be the right person to attract the right relationship. So after you break up with someone, take some time off, heal and grow higher, let your next person be at that next level, right? That's how it works. So if your home and your cars and your finances and your people and your spirituality, your mental, emotional health, all of that, if your physical health, if it's not where you want it to be, I strongly encourage life mastery work. We have a life mastery course. I actually have a workshop coming up pretty soon online. It's only like $99. And, it's just this, like, I'm keeping the price low just to let people know it's an incredible teaching, and I want more people to get into it. So don't just move them away from anxiety and depression. Become whole. Show your clients wholeness. All right. And then just the law of giving and receiving. If you want something, give it away. If you want more health, wealth, and enlightenment, become it and give it away, and it just keeps amplifying. All right. One of you said, in my events, I have them create an energy ball at the end and fill it with all of the love they can feel. At the end, I have them open their arms wide to release the energy. And with their arms wide open, giving, I say, now I leave you with an open heart. Beautiful. Thank you. Again, I'm not saying your names, but appreciate all of you who are here. Right on. I couldn't agree more. I'll just add. So yes, and remembering the pain that's there too, right? Like as we're working through this stuff, it's like open to the love, but remember, the closer you get to the light, the more you see your shadow. So there's a book that we, I guess, require technically in our school called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. So while a lot of us here, in the school and who listen to a talk like this are spiritually aware, we always want to remember in facilitation work, we're really like focusing on the shadow as quickly as we can. So perhaps also, not also, because we have to talk about what you're doing, and I'm sure what you're doing is great, but yeah, just another thought would be like we're welcoming in that inner child, we're welcoming in the pain, like Eckhart Tolle calls it the pain body, right? It's like who's in there that's in so much pain? So when we say open, we need to remember when we suppress, we do suppress the love, but we're suppressing the tears and the sadness, right? So when we open, the first layer that tends to come up is actually the stuff that needs to be regurgitated, that's clearing out. Like in ayahuasca ceremonies, it's called getting well, where you're vomiting. All this stuff's coming out. All right, so awesome. Thank you. Let's finish up the slide, then we'll wrap it up to not be overly long. Emotional freedom technique, EFT, is a great self-help technique. They call it tapping. There's different acupoints that help to actually just get energy to flow. It helps to make really relatively rapid shifts. You can do it with your clients. You can teach your clients to do it to themselves, like in your very office, or you can do it for you. We don't teach at this school. I need to bring in an EFT teacher someday because it's good stuff. We just have our techniques and it works just as well, maybe if not better, of course. But EFT is a really good, simple, easy to learn method of helping you to know what to do when you're anxious and depressed. Seriously, consider EFT. You could just be at home tapping yourself all day. This tapping technique and helping to get free. Meditation, of course, 2 weeks from now I'll be doing a class about why is meditation so important for mental clarity. It's amazing to listen to people's minds who don't meditate. They're just not in the present moment. They live continually in the past and they project onto a false future. Meditators, I've been meditating for 30 years, live in the moment. Every moment is new and fresh. You don't hold on to the past. You're not living in the past. You can reference it, but God, you're not living in that illusion anymore. So if you want to get free of anxiety, which is largely fear, of course, be here now. If you want to get out of depression, be here now, right? The things we're so depressed about, if you're just sitting at home, you're not having bombs falling in your head, because, all right, I admit, there's some situations that are tragic. But if you're sitting at home, you have electricity and food, and you don't have to be depressed because in the present moment, there's so much bliss and light and love and joy if you were just in the present moment. So when we meditate, we let go. We just keep letting go. Whatever you learn to do when you meditate, Just keep learning to let go and cling to the present moment. Just force yourself to be here now. Stop being so afraid of the silence of the moment. When you're fully in the moment, you'll realize how many blessings are there, right here, like in your face. Like in the Matrix, you're not actually in the Matrix. It's a computer generated dream. Where you actually are is heaven. And that's what's crazy about an angel seeing anxiety and depression. It's like, why are you depressed? You're in heaven. That's how insane it is. What are you scared of? You're in heaven now. I know you think you're in a body, but you're not. You're in divine consciousness now. So hypnotherapy can absolutely help us to liberate people back into that state. But meditation empowers them to do it at home every day. Self-hypnosis, we can learn to hypnotize ourselves, and we can learn to program in whatever we want. So you can program in things like, I remain in the present moment. I keep my heart open. I work to achieve success in all aspects of my life. Once you learn how to make a hypnotic program and recording, program in the thoughts you want to think. It's really simple, right? It's positive thinking, but it can be more than that. It could be choices. I now choose to wake up to who I really am. I now decide to open my heart and to fully love. Not just every day and every way I get better and better. It's not just PMA, positive mental attitude. They've actually proven PMA doesn't really work all that well. I'm not speaking as positive thinking. There's a lot of that going on, and it's better than the negative thinking. But awakening goes beyond positive thinking, because you have negative sun scars, you have positive sun scars. Enlightenment, no sun scars. So we don't want to paint all the filters pretty. We want to clear all the filters. Right? Neuro-linguistic programming is largely about switching a negative filter to a positive filter. Yogis, no filters. Zen masters, no filters. Deep meditators, no more filters. That's freedom. And that shows you're already whole and complete. That's the model. You're already whole and complete. I'm not going to make you whole and complete. I'm going to show you you're already Buddha. All right. Question says, what are your thoughts on using plant medicine like ayahuasca to help facilitate this process of inner discovery? For the right people, sure. Not for everybody, and it should be done in ceremony with real shamans. If you're just doing it with your buddies, just to see what it's like, it can be a hellish experience. So, and that can just turn people off. But yeah, if you're really doing proper plant medicine, the ayahuasca experience, from my experience, which is very limited, but you asked. So you can absolutely speed up the process of spiritual growth with sacred plant medicine, not just drugs, but shamans who truly understand the awakening process. It's an extremely powerful experience. I've tried it once. Personally, for me, pure bliss, pure love, pure light. But I'm like, I feel that all the time now anyway. Because if your system's open, you're not going to purge. You're not going to be vomiting. So I was literally sitting in meditation. Everybody else is like on the floor crying and puking and doing whatever. Most people are really purging, while the shamans are sitting upright holding space. I just sat upright with the shamans holding space for everybody else who was purging. Because if you got clear, you don't need that. And I never used that to get clear. I'd done it once after. And I was like, oh, great. It's the biochemicals of bliss. Okay, but bliss is attainable through meditation, and it's more sustainable. So ayahuasca, like breath work, can speed up the process. But, you can't do it every day. So we can do breath work once a week for like 10 sessions. You could do 3 or 4 ayahuasca experiences, but eventually you get clear. And so, yeah, anything that's really helping you get clear faster, great. But a lot of the drugs out there are experimental, but ayahuasca, and then, so that's grandmother, and then grandfather is peyote, as I understand it. So getting a relationship with grandmother, grandfather, people have done that for sure. I respect that. I dated a shaman for a year and a half, so I get just how powerful it could be. At the same time, the person I'm referencing, I won't say much out of respect, after doing ayahuasca like 16 times, still had a lot of healing to do. Okay, so you can't truly liberate your psyche, in my opinion, through external substances, no matter how sacred or refined they are. So the real work has to be the relationship with the inner Shakti, the energy inside of you. which ayahuasca can amplify for a while, but only for a while, right? Then you're back to normal. And without this complete integration that we're talking about, I can tell you, a person I knew who did ayahuasca 16 times, whose religion was shamanism, was really not fully whole. And I'm not saying even I was at the time, but I can just say 16 ayahuasca sessions and still working towards wholeness, which means there's got to be another way. Okay, but I believe it can help. Nutrition, just quickly. I'm a big believer in the work of Dr. Gabriel Cousens, a largely raw food diet. So raw, live food that contributes to your life force energy. Like, maybe not too much fruits because of too much sugar, but like raw vegetables are such good foods. There's like not really a single, I'm not giving dietary advice, but there's hardly a single tradition that says don't eat vegetables, right? So living vegetables, if you can assimilate those and digest those well, is just to consider that as opposed to like a Big Mac, right? Big Macs are tamasic, they're heavy, they're dense. But, like broccoli, right? Broccoli is a flower. Or I don't know technically, but right, but it's a flowering energy. Consider the food you're putting in your body absolutely affects you. And too much sugar, refined white flour, yeah, we're contributing to anxiety. So it has to be holistic, right? It has to be integrative. It has to be functional. It can't just be like only the mind, because the mind has to make the right choices for the foods and what we put in our body. Obviously, exercise, just get out there, just so obvious, but encouragement for anybody to do it. Motivate your clients to do it, right? If you're a facilitator, we've got hypnotic programming. Program them to exercise 3 or 4 days a week. Go for a walk for 4 times a week. It might be more than they're actually doing now, and it can really help. And then remembering to get out in nature. Forests have negative ions or whatever. There's all this oxygen. If you walk in nature, you feel better. So not just in the hypnotic programming where we visualize being on the beach or something, like really programming people, get out in nature, go in the trees, go, let the nature spirits fill your being. So awesome. All right. I believe that probably takes us towards the end here. So yeah, our next state licensed hypnotherapy training begins June 29th, 2022 in person in Orlando for 30% of it. And then 100%, so 70% online, 30% in Orlando, or 100% totally online, as we're licensed by the Department of Education to offer the training 100% online now. So I'm open to any last questions you're sharing. While I'm just wrapping it up, if you type something, we can talk about it. We'll be here next week on 4th of July, well, it's still early before fireworks, talking about what is consciousness, and the week after talking about why meditation is so important for clarity of mind. And then tomorrow night, we will be doing the On-Hat Meditation System support group, and then we'll start going once a week with that one. All right, so it looks like we're good. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you being here, supporting this work. If I can improve or do anything to be more of service, I'm really open to feedback. And thank you, and we'll see you next week. Good night, all.